Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our weekly streaming sessions. My name is Larisa Pastushok, and I'm a teacher at online IELTS preparation school Вперед Global. Today, we are going to have a look at writing task 1 academic module, its structure, and the types of questions you can come across. So let's start. I will share the screen for you right now so you can see the presentation. And so let's start. So in writing task 1 academic module, you are requested to describe a visual. So you should use a formal style of writing. So what does it mean? No contractions should be used, no abbreviations, no phrasal verbs or idioms, and use impersonal structures. Passive voice helps here to bring more formality to your writing and make it sound more academic. And no exclamation or question marks should be written here. So you should spend about 20 minutes to these tasks, and during this period of time, you should plan, write and proofread your essay, because according to the statistics, so students, they generally correct from 2 to 6 mistakes during this, so don't ignore that. And so you should write 150 words or a little bit more. So remember that academic task 1 writing, so it's worth only 33% of the total mark in the writing test. So you should leave yourself enough time for writing task 2, which is more valuable. So there are 4 areas of assessment. You can see them, and each of them contributes a quarter or 25% of your total score in writing task 1. So how the task may look like. So this is like a typical task, a description of a line graph. So you can see that it consists of the question, it is in blue, and the instructions, they are in black, and the visual, which usually has the title. So let's read the task. So the graph below shows the number of books read by men and women at Barnaby Public Library from 2011 to 2014. So this is the question. So, and the words in black, they are instructions for you. So how many words, how many minutes should you spend, and how many words should you write, and what you should actually do, like summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So this information, so these instructions, they will always be the same. It doesn't depend on the type of the task. So, and the visual, so let's have a look at the visual. We have a line graph, a very typical type of writing task 1. So we have the horizontal axis, which shows us years, and we have a vertical axis that shows us number of books. So units of measurements also mentioned here. And we see the lines. So we usually see that something is in green, in blue, so they are usually colored. So, let's have a look at the structure. So how we should, what should we do with this task? So we need to start the from our introduction. The first paragraph is always an introduction. So the reason for introduction is to tell the examiner what are you going to write about. So you should paraphrase the task using the synonyms or changing the sentence structure. And remember to keep your introduction short. Just 1 or 2 sentences would be enough. Then we have an overview. So an overview can be either in the same paragraph as the introduction, just immediately after the introduction, or it can go in a second separate paragraph right after the introduction. So in this case, we will have more paragraphs. And it can also be at the end of your essay. again in the separate paragraph. So like all three options are possible here. So what is an overview? An overview is simply a summary of the main or most important points in a graph. So when giving a general overview, you shouldn't state any specific details like numbers or percents. They simply write what's happening on the graph overall, generally. In fact, we can write a very good introduction trying to look at a graph through the eyes of a child. So just if something grew bigger or smaller, if we have more of the purple color or of the green color. So it should be something simple and noticeable. So if we come back to our graph, so if we show this picture to a child, so the child would probably say that in the beginning of the period, the blue line was higher and at the end it's lower. And the green is vice versa, it was lower and then in the end it's higher. So this is basically a very noticeable thing. So this is an overview. And then after the overview, we have body paragraphs. So there are usually two body paragraphs. And here in these body paragraphs, we should write in detail about specific features that are happening on the graph. And here we can support it with numbers, percent, I don't know, years maybe. So please pay attention that we do not write any numbers in the overview. So you should write numbers in body paragraphs only. So we have mentioned the line graphs. Here we can see the basic sample answer for the graph that we have talked about. So in blue, we can see the paraphrase task. It's our introduction. You see, it's just two sentences, very simple information. The task is paraphrased. Then we have two body paragraphs. They are in purple. And the information here is supported by years, thousands of books, and so on. So there are two body paragraphs. And in this case, we have an overview at the end of the writing, at the end of the essay. So it's in green. And here you can see no numbers, no percent, no numbers, no years. So this is like a good sample answer. So we have mentioned the line graph. So let's look a little bit more. So what is a line graph? So it's basically a line graph demonstrates you how the degree or quantity of something changes over a certain period of time. So as you can see that the horizontal axis is usually a timeline that indicates years, months, weeks, maybe centuries. And the vertical axis, it shows us the units of measurement, some maybe other information, but it can also help us to visualize the information. So the title usually tells what the graph is about and mentions the time frame. So like here, if we take the first line graph, so national recycling rates and the time period, energy consumption by fuel and the time period. So line graphs, again, they are very similar. You can find them very often at Writing Task 1 Academic. So the next type of the visual is the bar graph. So the bar graphs they are actually very similar to line graphs. They also have two axes and are used to show how something has changed over time or to show comparison among categories. So the bar graphs consist of rectangular bars, so they are usually in different colors, which can be oriented vertically or horizontally. The length of the bar itself is proportional to the value it represents. So they are typically used for comparing more than two or more than three values. Some bar graphs present bars clustered in groups of more than one. So they are called grouped bar graphs. So you can see like coffee, tea, and milk, they are grouped together. The other type is they show the bars divided into subparts to show cumulative effects. So they are called stacked bar graphs. In a stacked bar chart, parts of the data are adjacent in the case of horizontal bars or stacked in the case of vertical bars in columns. So each bar displays a total amount broken down into subparts. And they can be useful when the point is to show that a value is the sum of other values and you are interested only in comparing the totals. This is why some students find it problematic because stacked bar graphs are less precise. So, and there are three types of bar charts in IELTS tasks. So they are bar charts with categories on the horizontal axis, like goods or countries. So here we can see food, healthcare, and so on, and bar charts with dates on horizontal axis, like months, years, and so on. So these with dates, so they are very similar to line graphs, and there are all. So if you can take a pencil, so you can connect the bars together, so you can see a line. So probably you can see the pattern, the trend. So maybe for some students it can be helpful. It helps them to visualize what's going on the graph better. And you can also have two bar graphs together. So you should compare them, analyze them together. So when you get a chart to describe, so it's always important to check whether there is time frame or not. So, and if there is, you need to use the language of change. Another very common type of the task is a pie chart. So a pie chart, or it can be called a circle chart, is a circular graph which is divided into slices or segments or sectors to illustrate the numerical proportion or percentage. So pie charts are usually about percentage. In a pie chart, each slice or each segment is proportional to the quantity it represents. So the approach is similar to that you use when describing a bar chart or a line graph. So to see the main trends, to summarize them, and provide overall analysis. In IELTS Academic Writing Task 1, we can come across static and dynamic charts. So the static chart, as you can probably guess, doesn't have a time period. The information here is over one period of time, while dynamic charts, they can have 2 or even 3 time periods. So here, we have to describe how trends change over a period of time. So in this case, you will have to describe changes, similarities, differences between two pie charts. You should also pay attention that in IELTS Academic Writing Task 1, you can be given one pie chart, 2, 3, 4, or even more. So you shouldn't be surprised if you have like 4 or 6 pie charts together. So the approach is the same. The next type of visual is a table. So the table can be given separately or as a part of a two-source task. So the table, so you probably see that it just contains some information, some words, numbers, or other signs. So they are displayed in columns or boxes to illustrate a set of facts. The information in the table can be presented in different ways. So you can compare how one or several indicators are distributed between different categories at one period of time. So in this case, like here, we should focus on the language of comparison and contrast, as the table is not over time. Also, you can be asked to make comparison of how the same indicators are distributed between categories over a period of time. So in this case, we would treat it like a line graph and describe the changes. And you can also have two tables together, so you can be asked to compare them. So in this case, you should write a paragraph about each one. So the next type, so let's move on, maps. Maps are not very common, but still they do appear in writing task 1. And this type of question is becoming increasingly popular, and according to students, they are relatively easy to describe, as there are no numbers or values to compare. Just you need just to describe the picture and probably some objects that you can see. So, so there are 3 main types of map questions. So the first, like this one, let me show that, like this one. They ask you to describe one map in a present day. So this happens really rarely, because it can be presented like usually in a 2-source task, a map and something else. But still, if you get such a task, so you should be using the present simple tense to describe the items shown on the map, their position in regard with each other. So this type of question sometimes can be included into 2-source task, as I have already mentioned. The second type, like this one, 2 maps, one in the present and one in the future. This kind of task does come up occasionally and would require you to use present and future tenses, and is normally about the future development of a city or any other site, or a park, or maybe a town. So it requires the same vocabulary as the other 2, but you will need to add future tenses as well, and certain specific lexes used to describe projected changes. And finally, the third type would ask you to describe 2 maps, one in the past and one in the present. So the third is more common. So you will normally be shown 2 maps, as you can see, and asked to select and report the main features and make the comparisons where relevant. So you will obviously be using both present and past tenses to describe the maps and how the place have been developed. So the next type of the task is a process. So in your writing task 1, you can come across such a question as description of a process that can come in the form of a diagram or a flowchart. Although diagrams are not very common in IELTS, they do appear in writing, and they are a bit different from other types of the visuals that you can get. So there are 2 different types of process questions. A natural process includes, for example, the life cycle of an animal, like a frog or a butterfly. Maybe the water cycle, the rock cycle, the photosynthesis, or how cows produce milk. So these processes are usually well known, and people generally have the basic understanding what is going on. So when describing a natural process, use a mixture of active and passive structures. You should use the present tense to describe a natural process, unless the diagram specifies that the process happened in the past. So a man-made process includes things like how products like coffee or tea or sugar or wine are made, how cement, bricks, or glass are produced, or how the internet works, for example. It can also describe the production of electricity from solar panels, wind turbines, or nuclear reactor. So when describing an IELTS process that involves humans, the focus is on their activities, not on the person doing them. So we use the passive voice here, not active. To be successful in writing task 1, diagram question doesn't matter whether it is a natural or a man-made process. They both follow the same structure and principles. So you need to paraphrase the question first for your introduction. If you describe what is happening generally in 2 sentences. So this will form your overview paragraph. While writing an overview, and it can be true for any writing task 1 academic, try to imagine that the reader, the examiner, cannot see the picture, cannot see the question. So your words here will help them to visualize what is going on the picture. After that, divide the process into 2 parts, approximately, and write 2 separate paragraphs about each stage of the process. So it can be easily done with a man-made process because it has the beginning and it has the end. So you just find the beginning, follow the arrows, and you can see the end. So what's going on as the result of this process. But it can be a bit problematic with the cycle, because here some students they find problematic to find what will be the start of the process. So my advice here would be find the most logical start of the process for you. For example, if we take the life cycle of a frog, I would say that the most logical point for me is the adult frog. So I will start describing from this point. So then I will divide approximately the diagram into 2 parts and write 1 paragraph. So in 1 paragraph, I will write about the 1 part, and in the 2nd paragraph, I will write about the 2nd part of the picture. And at the end, I should write that probably when the frog matures, the cycle repeats itself, or when the frog matures, the cycle repeats again, because it's a cyclical process. It doesn't have at the beginning and the end. But with a man-made process, it's a little bit easier. So, and finally, the last task here is a two-source task. So you can be given a pie chart, for example, or a table, or like when we see the or it can be a bar graph, or a pie chart, or a bar graph and a line graph. So any combination is possible. This means, what does it mean? So if you see the two-source task, it means only one thing, that you have to be very careful and select your information accurately, as you may have a lot more to write about in the same 20 minutes than if you were presented with just one visual. So often students find it challenging to express the relationship between more than one data source. So what is the ideal task 1 structure for this type of the task, multiple source? So the first paragraph will always be your introduction and an overview. So you should write in your introduction about 2 sources, so connect them. For example, like the bar graph describes this, while the line graph describes that. So you should write about 2 sources at the same time. The overview follows the same structure. In the overview, you generally describe what's going on the first visual and in the second. But remember that in either case, you do not write any numbers in the overview. The numbers, they appear only in body paragraphs. So then, in the first body paragraph, you analyze the first data source, like we do normally. So that is to give general description of the first graph, outline its main trends or details, and support information with figures and dates. So in the 3rd paragraph, or it will be maybe the 4th paragraph, the 2nd body paragraph, you have to do the same with the 2nd data source. And in the 4th paragraph, you should provide brief description of the relationship between the 2 data types. Sometimes students ask, so what if I can't see the relationship? If I can't see anything in common between these two visuals? So here, my advice would be probably just start writing. So write the introduction, write an overview, and describe two sources in two body paragraphs. Maybe while you will be doing that, something will jump on you and you will get the idea of their relationships between them. If not, just stop looking for this relationship and don't write about it. So you should always remember that you shouldn't spend more than 20 minutes on this task, as you still have to writing task 2, which is more valuable. So if you don't see the relationship, at least you have your overview, you have your introduction, and you have 2 body paragraphs, and you will get a decent mark for that. Not perfect, but still. So writing task 1 academic module generally tests your ability to select and report the main features, to describe and to compare data, and to identify significance and trends in factual information. As we have already seen, there are many different types of the task. The good news here is that you can use the same structure for all types of the task. Whether you describe a map or a line graph, the layout of your answer will remain the same. So of course, in this stream, we have covered just the basic information about academic writing task 1. We have special video and online courses dedicated to this topic. So please feel free to contact us for further information, and we wish you the best of luck with your IELTS exam. Thank you very much and goodbye.